So the Donald Trump clown show continues.
What's going on today?
Well, Donald Trump says he does not trust or believe our own intelligence.
Then who does he trust?
That's the question. It's looking like he's listening to Israel and Netanyahu kind of stuff, and that I guess Trump is trusting Israel and Netanyahu over our own intelligence. Now, he doesn't say that yet, but these are what reporters should be asking. If you don't believe our own,
People,
yeah,
who do you believe?
yeah, and that's really the number one question. So, what's going on right now basically is they're still fighting, unfortunately. Iran is signaling we will come to the table and talk, but what do they want?
Stop shooting us.
Yeah, yeah. And they've heard that like that's like
fair, I think.
that's our main thing. Like we'll come talk to you,
Stop shooting. They keep shooting. How can I, walk to you, right?
Now Trump released a statement, basically, you could say, Trump is basically saying, "Well, Israel is doing really, really well in this fighting, and Iran's doing less well. So why should I tell them to stop fighting?" I know. So it doesn't. And then what?
It's not who's winning, lose. You gotta do, the less. You gotta, tend to less victim and have a good result, not someone's winning and losing.
Well, I mean, honestly, we all lose with this kind of stuff, right? I mean, we don't want any fight. Yeah, we don't want any fighting, but but that's. I mean, from Trump's actions, of what Trump says, he's clearly siding with Israel. He won't even listen to our own people. And there has been some rumors out there he's considering a nuclear weapon. Now, I personally wouldn't put too much stake in that. I think that's, that's just Trump.
Isn't it kind of ironic
What's that?
That they, attacking Iran, that you guys building the nuclear weapon, but we're gonna use it for you, but you cannot even study.
Yeah. So that's always a big hypocrisy of the West.
Yeah.
And this is something that I just want to make it really clear, guys. I don't want any country to have a nuclear weapon, right? So in my opinion, we should look to de-escalate, right? Like remove all these kind of weapons from every country. But this goes back to just sort of your fundamental core of international relations. Does a country have a right to do whatever they want to do? A country, like does USA have a right to do whatever they want to do? Does Israel have a right to do whatever they want to do? And does Iran have a right to do whatever they want to do?
That's the one is independent country, But, one country has more power, obvious.
Yes, yes.
And more money, more reach.
Right, right.
And, tell other people, country to do, you gotta attack them, you gotta buy it,
Yeah.
You gotta buy my weapon. We have a lot of old weapons.
And that's essentially what the USA is doing now. But you're getting into the core, though, of like how to understand a relationship between countries. So generally speaking, if a country does something bad, just for example, it could be any number of things. So let's say one country decides to attack another country. Okay, just for example.
Basically, before like the mustache guy.
Yeah, let's say the mustache guy, or or you could say in this case, Israel decides to attack Iran, or if you want to say Iran attacks Israel, whatever. Okay, here's a good example. We just use a hypothetical. Let's say hypothetically, Iran ever got a weapon. Would it be in Iran's interest to use it on Israel if they got a nuclear weapon? Would it be in their interest? And what would happen to Iran if they use? What would the world say about Iran if they use? Do you understand what I'm asking? Okay, or put it the other way. If Israel ever used a nuclear weapon on Iran, what would the world say to Israel? Would that be a good thing or a bad thing?
Of course it's a bad thing.
Of course it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Do you guys see what we're getting at here? Do you understand what I'm getting at? Yeah. Is that you ruin your relationship with the rest of the world if you ever use one of these kind of weapons. So that's the fundamental question is like, why does anyone have any of these things when they're should be unusable, because the destruction is completely awful and you ruin your relationships with everyone else, right? Now, why would you want to have a weapon? What's the basic reason why you want to have a weapon?
Because, you want to show your strength.
Yeah, it's basic defense.
Yeah.
It's the one of the.
They call it defense, but.
Well, but it's.
Now Trump is threatening.
Yeah, but we call it. Well, we call it deterrence. So the idea would be just here's a simple example. Would be like if I put a sign out in front of my house that says "Beware of dog."
Yeah.
And people are like, I'm not gonna, mess with that person. Or if someone says, hey, I have a gun, then I'm not gonna mess with that person, right?
Before it's the World War eras, every country kind of compete, who build the better weapon.
Sure. Well, even now, they certainly do that. So, for example, China recently has a new aircraft carrier, and they started to sail like farther than they ever had before in the Pacific Ocean. And so for the Americans, it's like, oh my God, what's going on? We're supposed to ones to have the aircraft carriers. It's supposed to be the strongest. So the Americans feel threatened. And here's the question. And I mean, to get into a whole ball of wax here, like, why is it okay for USA to sail their ships all around the world,
But,
right?
but why other country not even can study?
Right. Or why can't China put their ships all around the world? And people start saying, "Oh, Chris, you're so dumb. You should be pro USA for everything, and you just work for China." No, I just want you guys to understand like how the world functions,
Actually,
right?
make sure he's
What's that?
not Chinese. Anyway,
I'm
it's,
Vietnamese.
Some people call him Chinese, but
Yeah.
you're not Chinese.
I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm Vietnamese American, and I actually served the United States Navy, right? And I teach international relations. But I just want you guys to get your mind wrapped around how nations interact with each other, because the fundamental core is, could there ever be peace in the Middle East, which is what we want, right? So one issue, for example, could be, well, why doesn't Israel give up their weapons, right? They have nuclear weapons now. This would be obviously a touchy subject for Israel. Like, no, I mean, it's our weapon. We do whatever we want. And actually, from Israel's point of view, yes, Israel can do whatever they want.
Iran?
So that's why Iran would want one, is because they would want to protect themselves from Israel.
Yeah.
Because the idea is that if I have one and you have one, you're not going to shoot me because I'll shoot you back, and we both, we both die basically, right? So a lot of this is about deterrence. The people who are more on the Israeli side, who hate Iran, they'll just say, if Iran gets a weapon, they're going to use it for sure, and that'll be the end of Israel. That's the argument. That's the argument they'll make. But I would argue back. That's why Israel would have a weapon, because if Iran never used theirs, then that would be the end of Iran. And I don't think, honestly, any country would ever use it. But, can I guarantee that? Of course not. Of course I can't guarantee that, because you can get some crazy person like Putin, do whatever he wants. I'm 99 years old, and I'm just going to decide to hit. Yeah.
There is no me in the world. There is no world.
Yeah. So there's always that risk. And so this is sort of why, in my opinion, we should always be working to,
together
to get rid of all of them. So if anyone says, Chris, why don't you stop Iran? I actually agree with you. I don't want anyone to have a weapon. That includes USA, that includes Israel, that includes, Russia, etc. But here's the problem that we have right now is some countries have more power than others, and they use different types of power. Okay, so here's an example. Let's use the example again. A country does something bad. So if Israel is, say, and this is, be honest, killing people in Gaza, how do other countries respond to it, right?
Yeah, even sometimes they don't respond at all. Right?
Yeah, they'll just like,
Gaza doesn't really, give us benefit at all, so we don't care. So you kill them, whatever, you shut down board, whatever, we don't care.
Right. So some countries they're just like, well, it doesn't affect me. I don't care what you do, right? That's a good example, right? Other countries would say, well, this is where it gets touchy. Other countries would say, well, I want to trade with the United States because the United States has, I don't know, cars and oil and corn, and the United States is friends with Israel, and they told me if I say anything bad about Israel, then they won't trade with me, right? So what you're seeing in the world is you'll have a lot of sort of like positioning based on the relationships that you want to keep. Right. So in the Middle East, there's a lot of countries that don't like Israel because of what they're. It's not just Gaza. Gaza is just a part of it. But what they're doing in Gaza and the history of basically taking land from other people or breaking promises. Right. And people get upset when you bring this stuff up. But guys, this is a problem that won't go away anytime soon, unfortunately, because you have groups of people that basically fighting over the same land. That's what it ends up boiling down to. And if you want to trace it back to the end of World War II, please do. And because you'll find it opens up a whole can of worms. And you'll see that USA and Britain have tended to side with Israel over time, right? And then countries in the Middle East, say like something like a Saudi Arabia, don't want to really recognize Israel, right? And so then Saudi Arabia is always in a weird spot because they're like, well, I want to sell weapons and oil, and I want to do all this stuff and maintain relations with everyone. And then you get into the issue of like, say in USA, if they have certain interests that want to keep positive roles with Israel, etc. So everyone gets all entangled together, and I know some people are like, well, Chris, what's the answer? So the answer, though, is in good faith, if countries were serious about solving problems, you brought up a really good point, would be you would do public negotiations.
Yeah.
Right? So Iran would invite the USA, invite Israel, all these people who would actually see it all in public, see what countries are saying to each other, see the contracts, see the agreements, right?
They better keep it if they did agreement.
Right. And so here becomes another issue in international relations is, okay, what if a country breaks an agreement? Okay, what can you do? Because remember, we go back to, does a country have a right to do whatever they want? Okay, so one way you punish a country is
Stop trading.
yeah, you stop trading with the country. Another way is like you don't let them. Well, it's part of trading, but say don't let them send money in or out. So like
No financial.
yeah,
trade.
you're not going to use our banks. You can't travel to my country. Like so, it's trade, but I want to just you know sort of expound. Yeah. Other things you can do theoretically, if a country's like you know doesn't do that, is then you tell all your friends to do the same things.
Yeah.
And so the way the world is sort of I say kind of functions, because it kind of doesn't, is if one country does something that people don't like. So let's say, for example, North Korea, then they get completely isolated. And the concept is that if the people of that country suffer, then they'll want to act like everyone else to join the world. But in, say, North Korea's situation, unfortunately, the regular people suffer because they're not really part of the rest of the world like they could be, right? Free trade, their people can travel, etc. It gets really, really thorny. And, you know, and then you get to another issue. Okay, here's another issue. So I mentioned before, does a country have a right to do whatever they want? So another people that you could make the case, and I completely agree because I you know read all of your comments. Well, Chris, but Iran treats people really bad there. They don't have freedom of speech. They can do whatever they want.
You even have a freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, say right these days.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So I don't know if Iran's doing it, but I'll tell you for sure, China's doing it. They make fun of USA all the time now. So it's also true. China has problems with free speech. They imprison people whoever they want. They can make people disappear. But USA is doing the same stuff, and so then they basically we say air out each other's laundry. Like your dirty clothes we show, and that sort of makes USA look bad. So the way that you lead the world is you need to clean up your own home first, right? To show, hey, if you know we like, just for example, hey, we're getting rid of our nuclear weapons. Now we want you to do it also.
That's why we doing it before, because actually number-wise, the nuclear weapon it was decreased.
Yeah,
I'm not sure now.
That used to be a big issue of
actual number was keep decreasing.
Yeah, I honestly I'm not sure why that doesn't come up anymore. For those of you who have been following that particular issue, like we call it nuclear. The English word would be proliferation. There's just too much of this stuff. You know, how can we get rid of said things? And I remember that used to be on the news like, oh, hey, USA has decided to destroy X, and Russia decided to destroy X. It probably might have been with the fall of the Soviet Union that it was too hard to negotiate with them, and you couldn't trust them, whatever. And I think it's complicated issues, but I think the really big issue, and if you guys kind of I keep circling around it, but I'm trying to set up the groundwork so you guys understand this conversation, is that USA is too much in bed with Israel, and when Israel's not an honest or reliable partner, and then you also have USA not being an honest or reliable partner, then we come across as like major hypocrites. And so I agree that Iran is not perfect at all. I would completely agree with that. But if we're like not perfect and we're like doing not
worse things,
I don't say worse, but just bad things.
Bad thing, yeah.
Well, I mean, you could argue Israel's doing worse things. You could certainly argue that.
Iran already told stop shooting. Then we talk, and they said no, I'm gonna keep shooting, but you keep talking, I'm shooting.
Right. So one of the things that Iran could do, for example, if they wanted some sort of deal, would be let inspectors in. To prove to the world, hey, we're not doing any sort of nuclear weapons, etc. But yes, there's the hypocrisy issue of like, well, why can you have it? We can't. The other thing that you could do also, you could theoretically halt all of your programs, theoretically. Because the argument that people are making is like, why do you need any, you say uranium? Like, why do you need any at all? One argument you'd say why you wouldn't need it, just for pure research, we want to have energy purposes.
Yeah.
But theoretically, you could say, well, we're going to blow you up if you don't. I'm saying you could threaten them and say, we're going to blow you up if you just get rid of if you don't get rid of all your nuclear stuff. And then the other issue you could make the case for is like, if Iran breaks the deal, then you cut them off again, and then you could punish them otherwise. So I know we probably talked about too much in this particular episode, but but I kind of wanted you guys thinking about like sort of the problems that we're facing, and just want to have a chat with you about it. So do appreciate your time, and we'll catch you on the next video. So bye.